Spookies, and welcome to the Rick or Treat Horrorcast, hosted by yours ghoulie, Ricky J. Duarte. This week, we're talking about one of my very favorite films from one of my very favorite franchises. My guest hosts today are two incredibly talented and passionate and wonderful and gorgeous and kind and generous women. They are filmmakers and have just released a brand new documentary all about the fandom of A Nightmare on Elm Street. Please welcome to the show Paige Joy and Diandra Lazor.
Hi, thank you so much for having us. I'm so excited to be here.
Hi, everybody. Ditto.
I'm so glad and so grateful that you have taken the time to talk to me and be on the show. It's so great to meet you both, due to our mutual friend Roman, who put us in touch. She's one of the directors of Scream Queen, My Nightmare on Elm Street, about Mark Patton. So thanks, Roman, for hooking me up with these new friends.
Thank you, Roman.
But, you know, I have watched your documentary and I am blown away at this accomplishment that the two of you have achieved. You've obviously put in a lot of work. I would very much love to hear about you both individually, how you came together, how you've met, where this documentary came from. Take it away.
I am Paige Joy. I am the creator and director of FREDHEADS documentary. Thank you so much for having us on. I'm so excited to talk about the film and talk about, being a Freddy fan with other fellow Freddy fans. I met Diandra probably 13 or 14 years ago, and we met in a Nightmare on Elm Street forum, and our friendship formed. And I feel like that's kind of the basis of what FREDHEADS is, and what our documentary is about finding your friends through a Nightmare on Elm Street. And I'm very excited to talk shop.
Hi, everybody. I'm Diandra Lazor. I'm one of the producers and cast member of FREDHEADS, the documentary. Like Paige said, we met on A Nightmare on Elm Street forum in 2007, and we were the only two girls. We loved Nancy, and we've been friends ever since. So she's one of my longest, strongest friends. And it's been great to be a part of this journey of FREDHEADS, rather than, just going to conventions like we normally do, having this purpose. And setting out to make this documentary has introduced us to so many new people. I mean, we already knew quite a few thanks to the internet, but I mean, there are people in the documentary who we met like the day of whatever we were shooting with them, or a couple days before, and they came to our premiere when it was at Horror Hound in Cincinnati in September of 2022. And so that's just shows you the strength and the magic of the A Nightmare on Elm Street FREDHEADS fandom.
Totally. Actually, speaking of knowing people, one of the submissions for the documentary is someone that I know as well from social media a little bit. Shout out to Ryan Logan. We've never met in person, but we're friends on Facebook and Instagram. So it was pretty. I shot him a message instantly. It was like, "Hey, look at you! You're making it, kid."
What if that's why he texted me? He asked me where his digital code was for the film, and I was like, "Damn it! I forgot to put the letter in there to let you know that we weren't setting him out yet." We love Ryan. Oh my God, Ryan is so amazing.
Yeah, he's a great fellow.
Yeah.
Well, I just cannot brag about this documentary enough. You encompass so much, including the friendships and the bond that can come from fandom. There's a difference between fan and fandom, and this franchise has really created such a community. So here's my little secret, and please don't judge me. I'm a
Never.
massive Nightmare on Elm Street fan. And I don't necessarily even know if I belong to any fandom like solely, but if I do, it would be the Halloween fandom. And here's my thing about that is that we Halloween people are always off in the corner arguing about which movie's the worst, which one's the best, who's the best Michael, which one is the worst mask, which storyline of the 4 possible storylines that we have should we be following. We're all just fighting amongst ourselves, and then you look over and the nightmare people are having a fucking blast.
We're over there singing Dream Warriors.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So what you tell me maybe a little bit about what it is about Nightmare specifically that brings people together so tightly.
I don't know. I feel like a lot of us in one way or another have experienced some sort of like trauma, right? Like some sort of life altering thing that is essentially to us what we call like the Freddies of the world. And I think a lot of us look at this film just as symbolism for survival. And whether you were terribly bullied or you were in a bad relationship or you had a duality personality that you had to keep up, I think a lot of us just had our own Freddies. And the fact that we could connect to this, Nightmare is about like accepting stuff. And I feel like if when we talk about Dream Warriors, I'll get more into it. But we watched Dream Warriors again today. And I told my husband the scene with Kristen where Nancy comes in to the scene and she says, "Where did you hear that rhyme?" And Kristen collapses in her arms is such a moment that a lot of us I think felt because her mom doesn't believe her psychiatrist doesn't believe her, the people around her doesn't believe her, she didn't slash her wrist, all of this stuff she didn't do, and nobody's believing her, and in walks Nancy, and Nancy believes her in 2 lines, says this, and it's a validation for her. And so I think a lot of Nightmare fans resonate with that. And I think that they resonate with these characters and not necessarily a Nightmare on Elm Street as in like Freddy Krueger. They don't resonate with him. They resonate with the kids and the aspect of I'm not alone in this world anymore. And if this film is the only representation for them for that, that's what they grasp to. And that's what I grasp to. And then there's the other fans that love the fun of it, that they love the like exciting kills and that MTV Freddy and his one-liners. And it gives you all sorts of emotions. It gives you happiness, it gives you sadness, it gives you comedy and fear, and it really encompasses everything. And I think that that's why people just are so attracted to it in our fandom. And I also think it helps that like Robert Englund has consistently played the role. It's not like we're not arguing over who's the best Freddy. We are arguing over who's the best Kristen. Many of us are arguing over who's better. Tuesday.
We're gonna talk about those theories later.
Oh, so exciting. I have so many theories on that. But I think for me, that's the journey of this past 5 years doing this documentary. That's really what I've uncovered, because we went into this thinking that. We went into thinking, what makes our fandom stand out? We want to know. And that's why we asked the specific questions that we did, because we didn't even really know this. We all knew this within ourselves. We all knew that like we connected this way, but we didn't realize that an entire fandom connects this way.
Well, and I think that this film really is going to open a lot of people's eyes to seeing that there are more people like them out there. Growing up, we didn't necessarily have the tools that we have now to access other fans the way that we do. And I think it's really remarkable. You might meet someone online and then run into them at a convention. It's like you already know each other because you follow one another and you talk and you connect. This movie does a really great job of, a lot of people say this is a love letter to the movie, and yes, it is. Your documentary is also, and maybe even more than that, a love letter to the fans of the movie, and that really comes off in a really beautiful and an intentional way.
I think it really is not just to the fans, but like fandom in general, because there are so many people out there who like different things. Harry Potter, Scream, even though they're questionable. I'm just kidding. Don't kill me, guys. And all of these different things, but it impacts somebody in a different way. And I think this movie shows just how important fandom is. Not everybody might understand it, but why you can't discourage somebody from being a fan of something or connecting with people online. Yes, I know that the online world has been dangerous and it can be dangerous and it is dangerous. And I've had my run-ins with some pretty scary people over the years. But because of fandom, I have met my best friends in the world when I was younger and I'd see people hanging on to their friends and saying, you know, these are my favorite people. This is like a family to me. I would like didn't understand it exactly. Now I do. And now I have people that I could be completely myself without having to censor any part of me because we share something in common. And I found what I want to do in this world because of fandom. I've moved somewhere because fandom brought me here. I've met somebody that I'm with because the fandom brought me here or whatever. I mean, it really is transformative and it helps you find yourself, find your passion, find your people, and ultimately make life happy for you and make you feel like you're a part of something because underneath it all, that's really what humans want is to feel loved and understood and a part of something. And everybody has their group and we were lucky enough to find ours.
That's so beautifully spoken. It completely comes off in the documentary. I also, what you're telling me then is that it is possible to find love within fandom. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, it is. I think I,
Hmm.
I'm so appreciative that you feel this way about the documentary, that you feel like it's a love letter to the fandom, because for us, that's really what it is that we wanted to thank this community that has been so good to us and so welcoming and so much to us. But yeah, you can find love. I met my husband because of this documentary. I would have never met my husband if we wouldn't have started this documentary. And he was friends with Diandra and Kim and Jeremy and Anthony. And he showed up at their house one day when we were starting production, and we hugged. And I've never met him before in my life. And I hugged him and I walked away and I said, "Oh my God, that's my husband." We've been together ever since. So there is love in fandom, and he's a huge fan. Like he's a huge Nightmare fan and a huge Halloween fan. And so there is I think horror in general, and to lump it all together, is the best fandom out there of any of like the film fandoms. It's just amazing.
We that is actually a really interesting point when it comes to people like us who are obsessed with horror. This can be an off-putting characteristic to many people. Particularly when dating. I can't, there are many gay horror movie fans where, they're coming out of the woodwork more and more now. If you're going to get involved with somebody, they have to be at a certain level just as obsessive and into it as you are, or it's not going to work. Right?
Or at least open to a certain extent.
Yeah.
Like the guy that I'm with now, his name is Jason, which is very fitting.
Freddy versus Jason.
Um, yeah, that's what I say all the time. He loves movies, and he's very open-minded. He's not quite as big of a horror fan as I am, but I mean, when I met him in the couple posters that I saw that he had in his basement were American Psycho, which is one of my favorites, The Shining, and A Clockwork Orange, which is, kind of out there somewhere in between.
Right.
But I was like, yeah, you definitely have horror movies that you like. I mean, he's recommended like 30 Days of Night to me and just these different things that he's seen. So he definitely might not totally identify as like a horror fan to our level, but he definitely has it in there and he recognizes the beauty of horror films and it means a lot because of course you're right, there are a lot of people out there who are like, how's that horror thing going, and they just don't get it and you're just like, it's the best thing in the world.
You're absolutely, I mean, yeah,
Suck it.
they suck it. They don't get it. And they look at you like, oh, that's cute. Or,
Right.
or, oh, Ricky has a passion. Ricky has a hobby now. But like, no, 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 no. Like, it's not just a hobby. This is my personality. You're looking at the video of my bedroom. It's all painted black and I've got monsters everywhere. Like, this is my life, you know?
I love it. I love it. We need to find you somebody who just loves film and maybe
Great.
start with that. Because like if you love film and you love all things about film, then you have to at least respect horror as a genre, especially
We've
now.
got to start a horror fan dating app.
Okay, don't think I haven't thought about this. Because I have. Did we just start a business? Is that what I'm
Yes.
hearing?
We just did.
We're really good producers. Can help.
Guys, let's do it. Let's take a stab at it.
Well, so another wonderful aspect of your film is there's also a lot of focus on how much Nancy means to you, and turns out means to a lot of people. Do you want to say a little something about that?
Yeah, I think so for me, for A Nightmare on Elm Street, it's always been about Nancy. I enjoy the other characters. I love the other characters. I love Kristen. I love Sheila. I love them all, right? Alice, I love them. Jesse, all of them. But for me, it's always been about Nancy. I think a lot of people resonate with her strength because when she was the final girl in A Nightmare on Elm Street 1984, at that time, the final girls just became the final girl by luck. And it was something they stumbled into. And it wasn't necessarily a bad thing because they're young, they're 14, 15, but they stumbled into it. And I think seeing Nancy use her wit and use her brains and not stumble into being a final girl and instead like facing the fear and chasing after it and saying like we're playing in your court now, come after me. I think that's so empowering to people, and I think that's why a lot of fans gravitate towards her, but then they really gravitate towards her because of Dream Warriors. And Dream Warriors, so here she is in the first film being that way. And then she comes into Dream Warriors and she falls on the sword for these people and falls on the sword for these kids, saving their lives, and just continues to be a true hero. And I think that is what just really resonates with people so much in her character, is that you have to have that duality that like Freddy is such the dark. Well, who is the light? The light is going to be Nancy. And for me, that's how I've always seen her. And so we knew going into this documentary that Fred Heads was going to kind of be a backdoor thing of like, really, here's the message of we knew for us, we wanted to share this message of Nancy. And so we're like, we're going to do whatever it takes possible. But it surprised us how many other fans that it was easy for us because so many other fans were like, nope, all we want to do is talk about Nancy. So we're like, okay. And so we like to say that like the first half is all about Freddie and then the last half is all about Nancy. And it was so important for us to put that in there. I know for both of us. I know for me, I know for Dee. And with Dee's story, her story, I've known Dee since she was like 15 years old. And so for me, I've gotten to watch her blossom and turn into this iconic person that she is, that Heather Langenkamp calls her in the documentary. And I've gotten to witness her like document all of this online. And so really when I knew that we were going to have this Nancy section, I was like, I have to build it around Deandra. Like it would make no other sense to not build this around her. And everything that she says in the documentary is so poignant and so great when it comes to regards to Nancy and the fandom and the other people, that I think that a lot of people just really resonate. They resonate with who Nancy Thompson is.
Yeah, I think you said it really well, Paige. Nancy's a fighter, and I think for a lot of us who are horror fans can be outcasts. And it's pretty hard to find somebody who was super, super popular in school and is like, I am a horror fan. It's not too common. But I think we all feel struggle in some way. And I know for me, my confidence was not very high when I was younger. And so I think I was really on the lookout because I'd always had fandoms, but I was on the lookout for something that was like that I could latch onto that could kind of be an inspiration because I could not find it within myself. And when I saw Nancy, who was a lot like me in different ways, but stronger, I just was so drawn to her because there were so many things that I was afraid to talk about or face or, you know, find the courage to do. But I would always ask myself after that, what would Nancy do? What would Nancy do? Or if somebody was being mean, what would Nancy do? Would she curse back? Would she just slink away? How would she fight it? And doing that really taught me to like hold my own ground so that by the time I got older, I felt more confident because it was almost like a training. But she not only is a feisty one against the evil, she's also a caring one again, like for the people who are struggling. She is the embodiment. There's that saying that, be the hero that you wish you had when you were younger. And like essentially Nancy is that hero for a lot of people, I think. She's who we wish we had and who we want to be because she is strong. She does fight back. She does care about other people. And even in the face of somebody who, like, all of the doctors at Weston Hills who might not understand it, she's still holding her ground and being like, this is the right thing, which is, I think, a lot of a difficult conversation for some people, especially when you don't feel strongly about yourself because you just kind of give in to everybody and you're like, it's not fighting for, I guess, I really believe in it, but I'm nervous. It's going to take a lot. People aren't going to like me, whatever it is. So I just think that Nancy is that kind of figure for a lot of people, whether they realize it or not.
That resonates so strongly in the film. She's treated with such reverence and such care. And you made you stated that, in the first film, she's fighting back and she's figuring things out for herself, and she has to do this on her own because she doesn't have the support around her. And then in the second film, she's able to help others. And I won't give away where your documentary goes, but there are moments of vulnerability toward the end, and you are both able to really make yourselves emotionally available to those who are open to it. And perhaps in a way, what Nancy is able to do for these kids in Dream Warriors is something that the two of you are doing for kids today with this documentary, right? You're giving a voice, you're showing that they're not alone and that you have been through something too.
I really hope that it does come off that way. And I appreciate you so much saying that. At our premiere, I've had such a fear, and I don't want to insult anybody by what I'm about to say, but I've had such a fear that like the film people would not get this, right? But, like the ones who are just like in it for just like the fun and the slashers and this and I had to like humble myself a little bit at the premiere because I was like put in check because those types of people were the ones that stood up and were like, I feel seen for the first time in my life. And it blew me away that I was like, have enough confidence in have enough confidence in this film that like this is the message that's going to get across and that people are going to see it. And after our premiere, a friend of ours came up who was at the premiere and he said to me, my daughter is 12 years old, the same age that you were when this happened. There's an event that happens in the documentary that we talked about. And he's like, she's going through some of the stuff that you're going through right now. And he goes, I just kind of can't wait to get home just to have a conversation with her and give her a hug. And I started crying. And he's like, thank you for this. Thank you for this message. And after that, I was like, if nothing else comes of this, if nothing else, if we have no sales and nobody sees this and nobody else gets it, that moment alone was the reason why we did this documentary. It's the fact that he's like, I need to go home and talk to my daughter.
That's incredible.
Sorry, I'm choking up.
No, now I am too. Maybe the first time I cry on my podcast.
It was probably the best moment of there. Who was saying like, we love this so much. And, like I said, a lot of these people are saying that they feel seen for the first time. And I think that if this is the impact that we can have, I think it's great. There was a moment for Dee and I, we made a film in 2016, like just a fun fan film, like a short film. And we had like a fun premiere for it at a convention. And there was a little girl who's in our documentary. Her name is Sophia. And we've gotten to like watch her grow up over the years. It's crazy. But she was there and she was treating us like how we treat like Heather and Robert and, all the others. And
That's
for
cool.
us, it was a moment that we were like, oh my God, like that's the next generation. Like we see it. And then now with FREDHEADS, it's like we're really just kind of feeling it and seeing it. So we're very appreciative for everybody who has watched this. I think
That's really remarkable. Well, why don't we go ahead and move into the film? Why don't we start discussing A Nightmare on Elm Street 3 Dream Warriors? Let's go Rick or treating. All right, we are talking A Nightmare on Elm Street 3 Dream Warriors. This film was released in 1987. I was a year old. This features a return of Wes Craven, who had not been involved in Nightmare 2. He didn't feel that there was a franchise in the film, and then he realized that there was. I'm really glad that he returned for this one. You can feel his hand in this movie,
Sure. we're so excited that he returned. I love Wes Craven. His original script was great.
The Wes Craven trilogy is the best for a reason.
Wes is the best. The film features a return of Heather Langenkamp as Nancy Thompson. All right, when I was a kid, I thought I was fancy, and I used to pronounce her name Heather Langenkamp.
That is so fancy. I've heard so many
stupid.
different variations of it.
Langenkamp.
That's genius. That's their new nickname.
Is it, or is it
Henceforth.
stupid of me?
No, Langenkamp.
I was a really weird kid. Robert Englund returns as the iconic Freddy Krueger. We have Craig Wasson as Neil Gordon and Patricia Arquette as Kristen Parker. So this is Patricia Arquette before she made it, in countless other films. Was this before True Romance or after? I don't know.
Before. This is her first.
Before.
This is before True Romance. Yeah. A little bit younger in this one. Ken Sagos as Kincaid. His audition for this. Have you read about this?
Oh yeah.
He was, yeah, he didn't want the part. He didn't want to audition anyway. And then his bus was late and he was in a huff and he had to run to this audition and it was raining. He was not feeling it. And he walks in the room and the director says, "Okay, just do whatever you want." And he says, "Fuck." And he goes off on this director. And he got the part.
You're like, you got it. You're Kincaid.
I'm an actor. Perfect. I wonder if I should try that sometime. Probably not. Rodney Eastman plays Joey. We have Jennifer Rubin as Taryn. These characters are so iconic, right? Bradley Gregg as Philip, Ira Hayden as Will, Lawrence motherfucking Fishburne as Max, long before The Matrix.
But he was under Larry Fishburne.
Larry Fishburne in the credits.
He was just a little old Larry. He wasn't even a Lawrence yet.
I always think I can get my poster signed by him. I'm going to ask him, can you sign it Larry Fishburne, please?
Larry Fishburne. And looking real cute in those nurse scrubs, I got to say. We have a return from John Saxon as Nancy's father, Lieutenant Thompson. Priscilla Pointer as Dr. Elizabeth Sims. Brooke Bundy as Elaine. How can we forget her? I also want to talk about Nan Martin because Nan Martin plays the nun, sister. Is it Sister Mary Helen?
Amanda Kruger.
Amanda Kruger, but she has
Sister Mary Helen, Amanda Kruger.
Yeah. I was watching this last night and I rewatched it today and I was thinking, who is this woman? I know this woman. This woman was on not one, but 2 episodes of The Golden Girls, and she played not one, but 2 separate roles.
Excuse me, why is this not ringing a bell? The Golden Girls is my favorite show of all time.
Same here. You have to go back. She plays and I only realized, I think it was last year, because my favorite episode with her is when she plays Frida Claxton, the mean, nasty neighbor who wants to chop down the oak tree from her front yard, and Rose is trying to stop her, and then she dies. Rose tells her off, and she dies, and no one comes to her funeral, right? But she, in an episode before that one, she plays a distant relative of Dorothy and Sophia, or maybe it's Sophia's best friend from childhood. So she has these 2 different roles, and then she also plays the now iconic nun. We'll get into who she is in the film a little bit later, but it was driving me crazy. I had to look up who she was, and
I thought you were going to say Drew Carey. I thought because she was the boss on Drew Carey.
Oh, was she really?
Yeah. And I didn't know that. My husband's a Drew Carey fan. He was watching it one day, and I was like, oh my god, that's Amanda Kruger. Like, what? And I was like, that's Freddie's mom.
That is so funny. Well, she had a great career. Sounds like a very storied career. All right. Well, this movie was made on a budget of 4.3 to 4.6 million. And in the US alone, it brought in 44.8. This was, kind of the height of Nightmare, I guess, draw, right?
Right.
And it was only going to escalate. I guess it would only escalate from here as well. Is this around maybe the start where we get more and more merch for Freddy?
Yeah, I think that wasn't this one they called the Christian Freddy, and then the next one is MTV Freddy. And so this was the one that I feel like this film was popular, and then all the merch came out. I think if Dream Warriors wouldn't have done so well on opening day, on opening day, it was the first time an independent film had broke that record for an opening weekend. And so I think that the popularity is what then spawned all of that.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
That's totally
It's when
incredible.
Robert really started leaning into, they were like, all right, Robert, this is your third movie. You can kind of take the reins. And that's when he really started to come through with that personality of Freddy. But yeah, I don't know if have you seen some of the interviews of like during Freddy Mania, like around part 3, when they're like, yeah, Freddy, and all the 80s girls are like, yeah, man, Freddy, he's the coolest. Have you ever seen those? Freddy, he's every girl's dream and every girl's nightmare. It's like the dumbest, funniest thing in the entire world. I
Oh
wish I could have
boy.
seen the movie with them.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. That God, I gotta look these interviews up now. I mean, people they still are, but just imagine being, I guess, around in the scene, going to movie theaters when these movies were coming out, and you talk to people who were there, and not everybody was as obsessed with them as we have become, right? You kind of like went to go see these movies for something to do on a Friday night, and or go out on a date, or just kind of for, in some cases, some people for a laugh. I think that this movie is not a laughable one. Let's be honest, there are a couple later on in the series. uh, but this movie was a lot. I think it turned out to be a lot better than people expected it to be, especially for being the third in a franchise.
Right. I feel like Dream Warriors is kind of what sets the standard in horror, that everything kind of
Hmm.
back to, does it have the Dream Warriors effect? Like, is it almost as good, if not as good, as the original film?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the reason why it has become so popular and why all of that was the VHS era. My husband and I just talked about this, about how like all these like cult films that are really popular right now, if you look at it, like we were kids when they all came out. And so who was renting those? We were renting them as kids. Yeah, they of course bombed the box office because parents were going to spend $4 for 5 people each to go to this when they can spend $1 at the video store and rent it. And so I think that the era of it really, people went to go see it opening night, and then it was great buzz and it was like doing really well. But really it was when it came to like VHS, or when it came out to like HBO and it came into your home. And that's when I feel like Freddy just truly exploded. And that was with Dream Warriors, because previously it
Yeah.
hadn't really been that way.
And the backing of, Dawkins having that song, because horror and metal were really starting to cross over, and rock and roll and bands doing songs for horror movies were starting to become a thing. And that song by Dawkins was so popular that it just kind of also really added that extra pizzazz, because then they also had the video and everything. There's a really good show, if anybody wants to kind of learn more about Dream Warriors and Dawkins and how that all came to be, on YouTube by Gibson, called Metal and Monsters. And it has Don Dokken and Robert Englund with Piggy D, who's the bassist for Rob Zombie and a bunch of other things, talking about that kind of history. And it's just so interesting. But yeah, rock bands doing songs for horror just like started taking off. And it was like this rock star era of horror movies at that time. So it just gave it that little extra kick, I think, in addition to all those other factors that made it.
We'll be performing theme songs from famous horror movies like Pet Cemetery by the Ramones, or I want to do like the Ballad of Harry Warden from My Bloody Valentine, or Goodbye Horses that's featured in Silence of the Lambs, right? But I'm really finding, as I'm curating my set list, that many of these songs are not going to be possible for me to sing. maybe like the song Dream Warriors. I can't fucking sing that high, and I'm not going to have a full band. So I'm getting really kind of picky and choosy with which movies I'm going to be able to perform, but it's coming along. If nothing else, they'll be in the pre-show music.
Well, let us know when you're gonna have it, and we're gonna promote the heck out of it.
I
I
can't.
will. I absolutely will. Definitely. Thank you very much for that. I'm excited.
Yeah.
It's kind of set in the horror aisle of a video store, and I'm just going to talk about my Blockbuster days
Ooh.
as a little kid, and I'll take a VHS off of a shelf and sing a song about it, basically.
It's gonna do a couple pot of rays down the aisleway. I hope so.
Sure, why
Just
not? That
throw a
sounds
VHS
great.
tape.
Yeah,
Love it.
yeah. I'm working on a couple puppets, and yeah, I'm hoping in October. That's my birthday slash my sobriety date slash Halloween. So
Oh,
it's going to
wow.
be
Congratulations. Wait, when is your birthday?
October 3rd.
October 5th.
Are you kidding? That's so great.
Yeah.
You're Libras.
Ooh.
Well, happy almost halfway birthday. I guess we're getting there pretty soon,
Yes,
right?
same.
Uh,
Right.
all right. Well, hey, let's go ahead and get into this movie. Yeah.
Yeah. I gotta ask,
Mm-hmm.
the Quiet Cool intro or the Dock and Into the Fire?
Ooh, wait.
Do you not know this?
I didn't know. I didn't know there were two different intros.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so on the original HBO release with as a tie and a joke, they switched out the Dokken music, and so it's Quiet Cool because they made a film called Quiet Cool that bombed. And as an in-tie joke, they put that music in it. So there's a whole generation of people that were raised on that, thinking that was it only. And then when they re-released them as the box set on, I believe it was VHS first, and it still was the Quiet Cool. And then when they released it on DVD, they put the original music back in, which is Into the Fire. And all of the people who were raised on Quiet Cool were like, what the fuck is this? Like, this is not what I grew up with at all. I'm one of those people. I hate Into the Fire in that scene. You have to watch it with Quiet Cool. It's such a different tone for the scene because it's very like high energy. It's 80s. It's like synth music, and it's like I don't. It was my ringtone for so many years because I love.
All right, Deandra, which version do you prefer?
Well, I mean, I was raised on Into the Fire, and I've seen the Quiet Cool version, and it's like I really like it. It is fun. It is like, man, and I'm just like, yeah, but the Dock and the Into the Fire, it just gives it that like grit that you just want to fight. I just want to fight when I hear that. And I'm like, heck yeah, we're about warriors, dream warriors in this. I want to fight somebody. And so I do really like the Dokken one. And there's just like the chorus and the whole song. Like I love the whole song. And when they go to like take me back where I came, that like gives me the chills. When we were filming our fan film back in 2016, I listened to that song in the car, specifically that part, like every day. Just got me in the mood to do things. And so I love the Into the Fire. So you will have to look up the Quiet Cool version. I think it's on YouTube, or it was. I don't know if they took it down, but it's on YouTube.
My mind is blown right now. So I watched it on Amazon Prime, so it must have been the Dokken version, right?
That's the Dokken version. They don't have a copy unless it's the VHS and the original VHS.
Man, this is so
I like the
crazy.
Dokken song. I don't like it in the scene. I just I was, but that's what I'm saying. It was like a totally different like generation.
Yeah.
Like Dee saw it on the DVDs, and so she grew up watching it with that. You grew up watching it with that. But like for those of us who were like the OGs, I'm assuming I'm not old. And so those of us who were like the OGs, like that's what we were raised on was that. It was like, what the hell?
This is amazing. Well, see, this is why one of many reasons that I'm so grateful that you're on the show. So, at the beginning of this film, there is music playing depends on who you ask what music is playing. And we cut back and forth between opening credits and someone constructing a paper mache and popsicle house that looks pretty familiar. It's a reconstruction of Nancy Thompson's house from the original film. And we learned that it is Kristen doing this, portrayed by Patricia Arquette, obviously.
In this role.
All right, wait. Can we talk a little bit about the recasting of Kristen
Yes.
in 4?
All right, bring it on. Let's see what you got to say.
So are
I'm
you
curious.
who do you prefer? Do you prefer Trisha or do you prefer Tuesday?
Are you asking me?
I'm asking you. Yeah.
Oh, all right. I was thinking about this because I knew it was going to come up. I think that they're both very good because they are in 2 very different movies. Kristen is a different woman in each of these movies, and you are both celebrating, like I said, the right thing.
That's what I say. That's what I say. I just did a TikTok on this where I said there are 2 different characters.
Yeah.
In Dream Warriors, Kristen Patricia Arquette is she's a little shell shocked, a little like meek. She's like, nobody believes me. This is what I'm going through. It's at like the start of the journey. And we only realistically see her over the span of maybe a week or 2 weeks, right? So we don't know her. But like in Nightmare 4, our Kristen's been through some shit. Like she has been through trauma, and this is how she's dealing with her trauma. And I like them both, but like I prefer Tuesdays a little bit more.
Sure.
She's playing it from that aspect of I just spent this year or however, not year, a couple of weeks going through all of this. And then now the people who I thought were my friends and bonding, they're like, get away from me. Why are you bringing me in your dreams? Why are you still experiencing this? Get over it already. And she's like, I can't get over it. You know, she just lost her hero. She just lost Nancy. And so I think they're 2 totally different characters. And I love that you feel that because so many people pin them against each other. And I'm like, no, they're just different characters. And it's okay.
Yeah. Okay, good. I'm glad we're all on the same page about this.
Yeah, I can't imagine. I can't imagine them like Patricia Arquette in part 4. Like I just feel like she wouldn't be strong enough. And I feel like in part 3 you have to have that like meekness that Patricia Arquette brings to the role.
Mhm.
And so, but they do go so well in every movie. And I don't like. I know everybody wants to pit it, but I just can't. They're just Kristen, you know? It's
Yeah.
just Kristen in 2 different movies, and that's
Yeah.
all that it is.
Yeah, this so I cannot remember if this was the first Nightmare movie that I watched or if New Nightmare was the first one that I watched, because there's a kill in this one that I specifically remember being afraid as a child, which is the puppet strings. It was so influential on me as a kid. But then the kill in New Nightmare is when they recreate Tina's death scene with being slid up the wall, and they're both clear as crystal. My reaction to them when I was a child, I just don't remember which one I saw first, and I wish that I did. But we talked about doing either one of these movies.
Was it hard for you to watch Philip's death with the puppet? Like I still, as an adult, it's hard for me to watch that imagery because it's so good and it's so detailed.
It's so well done. It's so shocking. Freddy's kills are really mean in
Right.
this movie. With him, and I think the meanest one of all out of any movie for me is Taryn's death. It's just like, God, like you
So
went
spiteful.
there. Yeah.
Yeah. He was really a jerk when he did that. I mean, he used everybody's weakness against them. The
Mhm.
fact that he's taunting Will to get back in the chair, like
Yeah.
what a total jerk.
Yeah.
And then of course with Taryn, just death by drugs is like it's terrible. I mean,
It's
it
hard to
really
watch.
is
Yeah.
yeah, it's so personal.
Yeah.
And in mostly all movies, like mo in a lot of horror movies, I mean, they're just, killing somebody however, but Freddy really personalizes these kills, and I think that's what makes it even worse because he's not just killing them and they're scared. They're also like emotionally distraught because it's always something to do with like what they're struggling with in a
Yeah.
way. So, yeah, super mean.
Taryn's death is really hard for me to watch. She is fighting so hard in recovery. And even that scene with the orderly who's like, I got the keys to heaven, baby. And she's like, no, like I'm trying to be better. I am trying to move on in my life. And she's now got, again, Nancy in her life, kind of telling her it's okay and you're not crazy and this is what's going on. I see you. And she's trying to be better. And for Freddie to use that against her,
Yeah.
just so vile. Because when he kills you in your dreams, that's how you wake up in your deaths. So for her death, people probably thought she overdosed or she
God,
relapsed
I
from all.
never thought of this.
And
Oh my
that's
God.
why her death is it's so sad to me. Out of all of the kills in the franchise, hers is the hardest for me. And I
Yeah.
don't think a lot about this, and it's not the same stuff that she did, but I'm a recovering addict as well. And so for me, like seeing that, it's just like so heartbreaking that like that's all she wanted was to just recover and be
Yeah.
better and people to take her serious. And then in her death, it's gonna look like an overdose. And he's so cruel to do that. And I think that's what makes him such a perfect horror villain because he doesn't care about feelings. He doesn't care about any of that stuff. And it's fun to him.
Yeah. Yeah. He takes it to some really dark places. And I mean, Robert Englund, no one could have done it but him, you know. I have not seen the remake, so I cannot speak to that performance. I started it and about 5 minutes in, I just didn't feel right about watching it. So I didn't continue it. I know everyone has their opinion. We're not going to talk about that movie tonight, but I will say this was my first time watching this film since I got sober. And so that sequence, I knew it was coming. It's iconic. It's ingrained in my memory since I was a kid, but like it just hit in such a very different way today, especially her being that vulnerable, that new in an attempt at recovery, you know. But all right, we're not even there yet, for God's sake. So
I know we're really going hard.
This is why
Kristen,
Dream Warriors is such a good film, is
there's so
because
much to talk about.
there's so
Yeah.
much to talk
hmm
about it. And that's why it resonates with so many people,
Yeah.
is because you can see yourself in no matter what character is on screen, you're going to see yourself in one of them or
Yeah.
elements of yourself in each and all of them. And that's the symbolism. That's why Dream Warriors is my favorite. That's why people love it.
I guess before we go on, Peaches Christ is you must know Peaches Christ, a very famous horror
Yes.
drag queen who has a great podcast, Midnight Mass. And they did an episode on this film. And I'm gonna borrow Peach's theory that while Nightmare 2 is known as the gay one, and you know, the one that it kind of for the most part it comes across as from a homophobic viewpoint, right?
Right.
Because it's a lot of shame and hiding the monster inside, and then in the end he's saved by the loving of a good woman. And in this film, this is what I and taking this from Peach's opinion, for me a better representation of the queer experience, because you're finding your tribe. And this is not an exclusively queer experience, but me growing up as a gay kid, I watch this movie and I see, oh, you can be an outcast, you can be troubled, and you know, be finding yourself, and you can find yourself in other people. And this speaks volumes, of course, to your documentary as
Right.
well.
Like you could be othered. Like
Yes.
that's how I always felt. Like you're othered.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's why people are so drawn to Dream Warriors, is because whether you're part of the LGBTQIA community, or whether you are getting bullied in school, or whether you are left home alone, or whatever it is, like whatever it is you're trying,
hmm
your experience is, it's like you resonate with this, and it's because you're othered. You're not the social norm. You're not the popular kid. You're not the one people are looking towards or looking to. You just kind of get cast aside. And that's what these kids are in Dream Warriors, is they're just cast
hmm
aside. Nobody believes them. And not even their doctors. And so they band together because they're all they have. And that just resonates with so many different people.
These films do an incredible job of putting you on the side of the teenagers, whereas other slasher franchises, you're kind of just waiting for them to die. Most of them are annoying. And in this one, and you know,
hmm
I back to your documentary, having the interviews with people's parents was so cool, because the relationship between teenager and parent is so important in these movies,
Right.
right? Where
Yeah.
parents, a lot of them didn't understand their kid at the time, but they come to, and these movies are really kind of the theme of parents just don't understand. You know, no one believes
Yeah.
these teenagers. And I think that's why it was such a draw to so many young people as well.
I'll never forget when Wes Craven died. My mom, who of course is in the documentary, said, "Why are you crying like this? You cried more for him dying than you did your own grandfather," which is not true. I'm a very emotional person, but like those kinds of comments were just, they hurt so bad And I just remember hiding all of my stuff away because I didn't want my parents to take it away or to, tell me that I can't watch these movies, whatever it was. And it really is just like everybody struggles in a way, but I think those people, like you said, who are other pages is even more true, especially when there are the expectations of you need to be this kind of person. And I think that's also what makes Kristen one of the most tragic characters in all of A Nightmare on Elm Street, is the fact that she ultimately gets kind of pushed away by everybody that she loves. And her mom basically, drugs her to make her go to sleep. And she's got all this societal pressure, I think she's trying to put on Kristen to kind of be a part of the, popular kids. And I feel like she's almost like, why couldn't you have been like somebody else kind of mom? And in the end, she just almost in a way dies alone, except for having Alice. And I think that, you know, that is the sad reality for probably a lot of people, is they find somebody who, might be a hero, but ends up dying like Nancy was, or, all of their friends are like, we've moved on, why haven't you? But it's just left this hole that can't be filled. And it's so sad. But that's why these films are great, because like you said, it's there is an extra layer of these teenagers where you really feel for them, you really care about them. And I don't really think anybody necessarily roots for them to die. I mean, we like Freddie, we think he's entertaining, but our heart breaks every time one of those characters dies.
Yeah, it creates such an impact, and it makes you, like you said, love Freddie, but hate him even more every time he does it. Every time he takes one of them away from us, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
So Kristen has been making this paper mache Nancy's house. This is how far we've gotten in the movie. And her mom bursts in and says, "Get your ass to bed," and Kristen says, "Well, I'm having these nightmares. I don't want to sleep." And we hear a man downstairs say, "Where do you keep the bourbon?" And her mom has a house guest, and her mom is dressed super quote fancy for the 80s, and
It's like a giant scrunchie.
yeah,
Yeah.
like a giant scrunchie, exactly.
Giant Alex scrunchie.
She's got a man friend over, and she's very dismissive of Kristen and of Kristen's needs. We get a real quick intro to what kind of person Kristen's mom is. And so Kristen ends up falling asleep, and she finds herself in front of a dilapidated, rundown version of Nancy Thompson's house from the first film. And it's kind of like her bed is in front of it. You can hear the children, saying the nursery rhyme, 1, 2, Freddy's coming for you.
The leaves start blowing in across her face.
Mm-hmm.
The wind. It's
You can see that the house, for the first time, nobody else is occupying it since, whatever happened to Jesse
that
and the Walsh
image is
family.
so haunting when it like that camera
Mm-hmm.
comes up over the bed and she hops up and she like grabs it and looks, and it's, if you're a Nightmare fan, it's that sinking feeling like, oh, she's in the dream.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Production value in this movie is spot on. It's so good. They obviously had a killer budget.
Shout out to Mick Strawn, because he was one of the lead production designers on this, and shout out to Mick Strawn because he created a beautiful imagery.
Does an incredible job of making a nightmare world, presenting it on screen, right?
So she enters the house and goes down to the basement. She comes up to the front porch and there's a little girl there. And the little girl asks, "What's your name?" She says, "Kristen, what's yours?" And she giggles and says, "I gotta go now." And so Kristen goes into the house and chases her down to the basement, where the little girl is on a tricycle in front of Freddy's boiler. And she says, "This is where he takes us." And all of a sudden, uh-oh, Freddy's home. And then the dream lights up.
And she picks up this little girl, and it is instantly apparent that this is no longer a human child, but a doll with a really, really big, giant Dolly Parton wig on. She starts running down the hallway, and we get our first glimpse of Freddy, and he's behind her with his razor blade glove, and he's running after. I love his kind of almost a
Yeah.
gallopy run that he
He's
does,
got like this little wobble. Yeah,
Yeah.
he definitely does with that glove throwing him off a little bit.
Kristen gets stuck in goo, and it's like that nightmare that you have where you're running and you can't get anywhere, right? And so she's stuck in this goo, and her feet are stuck, and Freddy's getting closer and closer, and she finally gets away right before he gets her. And she looks down at this little girl doll, and she's dead, and it's a skeleton, a rotten corpse.
And all the hanging teens around her is like foreshadowing for what's about to happen to her.
It's
so terrifying.
It's an incredible set piece, all of these hanging corpses, and so Kristen wakes up and goes to the bathroom and looks in the mirror, and she reaches for the faucet, and when she grabs the faucet, the handle of it wraps around her hand like it's grabbing her by the hand, like it is a hand, and she's still not having a nightmare. And she looks in the mirror, and Freddy appears before her in the mirror, and it's a really great effect. The other faucet sprouts knives out of what would be fingers if the faucet had fingers. And reaches up, and the pipes, this is so cool, the pipes of the faucet, the copper pipes, look like the skeleton of a forearm.
Yeah.
Right?
So cool.
Great detail. Really great detail. It slashes at her, some blood splashes across the mirror, and then her mom bursts in the room. And Kristen turns around. She wakes up. She's been dreaming, and her wrist has been slit, and she's holding a razor blade in the other hand. And in her nightmare, she cut herself.
Because the mommy, and then she falls
down.
Yeah.
Falls hard. Falls real hard. She is placed into a psychiatric hospital for young people. Now, I read that this was not just like putting her away at the funny farm. This was actually something that was kind of a new concept. Send your kids away to psychiatric hospitals if they're misbehaving, and we will make them better. It was kind of commenting on what was happening in the mid-'80s, which I think is really interesting.
That's actually new to me. I didn't know that was the commentary on it. Ooh, see, I'm learning.
Kristen is they're attempting to sedate her, and she won't have it. She's I mean, she gives an incredible performance of screaming and not letting people get near her. Yeah. Just go big or go home. And she goes real big. real big.
It's like Hulk. She gets like Hulk in it too. She like picks up a thing and throws it across the room. Like you see real fear in her. Like she's grasping for everything. Get away from me. You're not going to put me to sleep. You're not going to put me to sleep. And that's kind of the running theme of Dream Warriors. You're not going to put me to sleep.
Yeah. Wes Craven said when he saw her performance, he knew that she would make it as an actor, through the years. And she certainly did. She's done a lot of great work. Yeah. There's a conversation between Dr. Sims and Neil, who is, he's kind of like leading the charge for these youths that are in the hospital.
Neil.
Oh, Neil, roll your eyes.
The big weenie.
Seriously, what does he do in this? You know what? I'm glad. We'll get to it later. He believes Nancy when she asks him to, and I do appreciate that in him.
Yeah.
But it takes a minute for him to get there, right? I'm in no way defending Neil. He is
good.
Not the star of this movie. There's been a conversation that these kids are struggling with sleep, and they're not sleeping, and when they do, they have these nightmares. We are introduced to I'm so sorry, the character who burns herself with cigarettes.
Jennifer Caulfield.
Yes, who
wants to be an actress.
She wants to be an actress.
She wants Hollywood. She just wants to study film. I just want to be on
she wants to be on TV. We learn about these kids real fast. Kincaid he's not like an angry kid, but he's heated, and he's got, he
very defensive
and he's not going to take anybody's shit, Defensive is a great word.
Now it's my dick that's killed me.
This movie has so many great lines.
Kincaid has my favorite line out of the whole movie.
Which one is it?
It is later on when he goes, he goes, oh, you think you hot shit with the little mute kid, don't you? Just because it's such a good burn because he does. Freddie's like, he's over here. And Paige just calls him out.
Yeah.
And I love that line. Love that line.
We meet Will, who is in a wheelchair. He has had, quote, an accident, but he has made a leap and harmed himself. Philip what is Philip's thing besides making puppets?
Yeah, I feel like Philip is such an underdeveloped character. I
Yeah,
think there's
he
some
Mhm.
backstory there that we don't know. I think he, as sad as this is, I think that he's just a filler character for a good death.
yeah.
Yeah.
We get a hint of what he is when like Nancy comes in the room and is introduced to him, and they're like, "Welcome to the snake pit." And then she's like, "Wow, these are beautiful." I know this film word for word. So like, where she's like, "Wow, these are beautiful," and he's like, "They'd be better, but they're afraid to give me knives because I might off myself."
I'm right.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I think his is obviously he's getting haunted by Freddy and stuff, but his might just be more depression based.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. He's very cynical in the way that he talks.
Yeah, he
So he's
is.
always got something negative to say. So that's probably what it is.
Like I imagine he would have been like the super smart ass kid in school, like
Yeah.
who was like checking the teacher and being like, "That's not true," like that's what
Yeah.
I imagine.
Mhm.
Taryn, as we mentioned, struggles with drugs. Joey does not speak, and he hasn't for a very long time. And those are our kids in group. So now they have mentioned that there is a grad student, right? She's a grad student who
Grad school superstar.
grad school superstar who wants
Gotta
to
put superstar.
who's going to come in and start working with the kids. And Dr. Sims is not really interested. We can't let someone this inexperienced run group, but they do it anyway. So when Kristen is about to get sedated, I mean, she's grabbed a scalpel and cut a nurse. She is not going to let anybody jab her. And she starts
Mm-mm.
saying the rhyme. And I think she picks up from 7, 8, better, got to stay up late. And Nancy, you hear Nancy say 9, 10, never sleep again. And Kristen knows, holy shit, this person sees me. Now we see
Yeah.
Nancy for the first time. This is her big reveal. It's interesting. I mean, this is only 3 years after the first film, and she just looks so much more. I mean, she's become a woman in that time, right?
Technically, it is 6 years from the first film. They jumped the timeline ahead. So in Jesse's film, it was I think 5 years or 4 years after, and then
Oh,
so she's playing. So in the original film, I think she's either 15 or 16. I can't remember what the official canon is on it. But by the second film, or the third film, she's 22. So they aged her up.
Mhm.
And
got it.
so she's like finishing her like grad school year, and this is her internship.
Got it.
Yeah.
Cool.
So she's been through the college years, and yeah, now she's going into her couple years of grad school.
I have a very important question for you that I think maybe only the two of you can answer. Why is her gray streak on the other side of her head?
Ooh, 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 ooh. Because they wanted to make her look older and they didn't watch. This is what Mixtron said. They didn't watch the original movie and go, "Oh, she has a gray streak. We should continue that." They're like, "We need to make her older, so let's put a gray streak." And they did, but they put it on the wrong side of her head.
Seriously?
Yeah, they had
Yeah.
multiple streaks in her hair. They had multiple in
Uh-huh.
her hair, and it was I think it was CJ. It was CJ Strawn, Mick's sister, who did it.
Yeah.
And they just the look of it is she said they looked too bright of Frankenstein, and so they just removed one, and they didn't realize the one that they removed was the one that was the wrong one. So
Yeah.
it flip flops. So
Wow. All right. Well, thank you for answering that question for me because it has been driving me insane since I watched this movie yesterday. I never noticed it when I was younger. It's been maybe 3 or 4 years since I've watched this movie. So anyway, all right. So she sinks into Kristen's arms and she's like, the doctors notice that she does well with this patient. All right. So Kristen has a dream and without even knowing it has sucked Nancy into her dream as well. So this is the second nightmare that we see. And we are back at Nancy's childhood home. There is a table setting with like a roast pig, and suddenly out of nowhere, it turns rotten and disgusting and gross, and there's flies everywhere. From there,
goes into Nancy's room. It goes into the room with the library where she is in the snake.
Mm-hmm.
And the snake comes through the floor.
Snake goes through all the walls and floors and stuff.
Such a cool effect.
Big old pee-pee.
Well, I never saw it as phallic, but it now that it's been pointed out to me,
you have to see it not covered in the goo. If you see
Okay.
it in the
Oh God.
original,
They put the goo on it to make it. They looked at it and they were like,
Oh
that is
wait,
a piece.
that's right. That's right. I saw it
Yeah.
in the
When they put the goo on it.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, because it was like a pink fleshy color.
Yeah.
Great. Well, so we see something under the rug and then it crashes through the walls and then shoots up. It's such a great shot because where Kristen
Oh.
is standing, this giant Freddy Krueger snake comes out from the ground underneath her and swallows her legs instantly, slams almost like a body slam, like in pro wrestling, down to the
Mm-hmm.
ground. And he's swallowing her slowly like an anaconda. And it's fucking cool looking. It's a great
Yeah.
animatronic.
it is so great. It's such a testament to like their special effects team because
Yeah.
like that stuff hadn't really been done. Like Dream Warriors changed the game on a lot of things, and
Yeah.
that special effects
Yeah.
is haunting. And then when Nancy falls through the chair and the glass shatters, like it's such a great scene.
Yeah. And
Mm-hmm.
Nancy picks up a piece of shattered glass and she pulls Kristen out and she stabs the Freddy snake in the eye and he spits Kristen out and then looks at Nancy and says, "You." And Nancy
I
says,
love that so
"It's
much.
so good." Nancy gives a really great delivery of, "Oh my God." And they're face to face for the first time. It's great. It's such a cool fucking moment because you see Nancy face to face with Freddy again, and we're not going to get this again until New Nightmare, like a decade later. So,
Right.
and even then, it's not Nancy, it's Heather.
One of the things about that scene that I love that I don't think a lot of people really realize is that when Nancy's sitting in her chair and she's hearing Kristen call her, and she has the Nancy took the paper mache dollhouse when she from Kristen, and so it's in
Mm-hmm.
her apartment, and she hears Kristen through it, and she faints and falls through the window. I don't think a lot of people realize that anytime they're in the nightmare house in the nightmare world, they're in Kristen's paper mache house. So like in the
Mm-hmm.
glass, you see the newspaper behind the broken glass. Later on in the film, when they like shatter through the
I
mirrors,
noticed the newspaper when the hall with the mirrors
yeah,
hanging
Mm-hmm.
on the walls. When the mirrors, I noticed the
Yeah.
newspaper. I didn't put that together, and I'm so
yeah,
embarrassed for myself for
they're
missing that
they're
detail.
and so many people don't. So many people
Yeah.
recognize because they just think they're in Nancy's house. They're no, Kristen built their prison. That's why it looks
Yeah.
different. That's why there's different rooms, like the big room that they go in with the door later on with all the stuffed animals and everything, because it's a dream world. It's not, it's now become a representation of what the 1428 Elm Street is. And so in all the rest of the films and all the other nightmares, it's the same thing because Kristen now has built this. And as she passes her power on to like Alice and stuff, it still lives on because that's through her. And I don't think a lot of people realize that the craziness connection that this really has.
As if I couldn't love this movie any fucking more.
Right?
So now Nancy has so Nancy is wakes up from the dream and there is a cut in her hand where she was holding that shard of broken glass that she stabs Freddy with. And Nancy knows she's been through this before. She does not need any convincing. Freddy's back, right? So Kristen reveals that when she was a little girl, she used to pull her daddy into her dreams, and he would wake up the next day and tell her about him, but he didn't know that she was doing it. He was just telling her that she was, pulling that he was dreaming about her, and she thought it was really sweet. And then, so she's had this ability for quite a while. At night, our little sleepwalker Philip, uh, he has these marionette puppets on the wall, and one of them transforms into Freddy, and it's done through stop motion animation. It's just cool looking. I think I'm of an age group that I love stop motion animation as an effect in horror movies. I think that now this would obviously be CGI, but the effects in this movie are great. Freddy appears at the foot of his bed, and his wrists and his legs get slits all the way down them, and his veins are pulled out of his body, and they are used as marionette strings. And you are both making disgusted faces right now because it's a
Yeah.
fucking hard thing to
It's,
watch.
I don't know about you guys, but sometimes certain elements in horror, and this is like one of the big ones for me, Philip's death, I feel like I'm a pretty empathetic person and I just watch it and I like feel what it would feel like in
Oh,
that moment
totally.
just to like get it totally pulled out of you, ripped out of you, and you just have like this tension and this pain from having it on the outside. And it just looks like the most painful thing to go through. And I think Bradley Gregg does a really, really good job. And I love how they have the like little drips of blood as he's walking.
Yep.
And just like because it hurts so badly and he can't do anything about it. It is such a great, memorable but brutal death.
Yeah.
So
Love
real
it.
too. That's the
Mhm.
hardest death for me to watch, not because it's the greatest death. I think the greatest death is Tina's. I think that it's the most impactful. It's crazy. It's a
Yeah.
shocker. It's opened up the whole, wow, this is what they're gonna do with this series.
Yeah.
But to me, that's the hardest death for me to watch because it looks so real and it grosses me out to a point that I'm like, the pain and the blood, it looks too real for me. That like I watched this film probably thousands and thousands and thousands of times. And the only, I think I maybe watched that scene 5 times in my life
Really.
without
Yeah.
being covering my eyes. Like it's too real.
Yeah. The score in this moment is really weird too. It gets on your nerves. It's kind of this pulsing like mirror, mirror, mirror sound.
Yeah.
The sound of the veins ripping through the skin is really gross. This is just a gross scene. We can move on. So
We've established.
Joey, our kid who can't speak, notices that his roommate is gone and he looks out the window and he happens to see that Philip is standing like outside a window, really, really high up window. And it's assumed that he's sleepwalking. And so Joey like pulls Will out of bed and shows him because Joey can't speak. So Will starts calling out, Philip, 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 and he runs to try to get help, but it's too late. We see Freddy Krueger, a really giant, cool looking Freddy Krueger in the sky who's holding the marionette strings with his hand, take his finger knives and slice it, and those strings fall free, and Philip falls to the ground and perishes.
It's so
And
sad. It's like he's taunting him. Like
yeah,
he's like doing the marionette and he's like, huh? Huh? Like, am
Mhm.
I gonna do it? Am I gonna do it now? Like creating that real like fear in him. And that's why, like, even in our documentary, like Deandra came up with that quote that like fear gives Freddie his strength. And it's like, because that is what he's really doing. He's like, huh? I got you scared now. And he's feeding off of that energy. And
yeah.
I always wonder, do the kids, are the kids seeing Freddie as well? Are they in the dream too? Are they half awake, half asleep? Like I always wonder, like, or are they just seeing him as sleepwalking and like he's coming off the thing, or is it because they know it's Freddie? They can envision him up there in the sky.
I wonder, but I feel like they can't necessarily see him because like when it pulls back and they're looking at him through the window, it's just Philip up there, just like by himself. So I'm assuming that that's the POV of the kids. But then again, I mean, through their vision, they might be able to see Freddy up there. They could be, half awake, half asleep.
They know
So
something's
who
wrong because,
knows?
well, the next
They
day though,
definitely know it's him though.
the next day Kincaid mentions something like he timed out, something like that.
He like
Uh,
tapped out or something, and then they're
yeah.
Mhm.
Well, so
no,
there is a
Freddie.
funeral for Philip. There is a funeral for Philip, and Neil happens to be there, and he sees a nun in. He's seen this nun once before in the hospital campus, but he sees this nun played by Frida Claxton from the Golden Girls in like a white wimple and a white habit and very kind of garish, base. And he approaches her, and then they have this exchange of what faith do you follow, and he says, I guess science, if anything else. He's very upset about what's happened, and she says, well, that's too bad. And the conversation doesn't go a lot further than that. Perhaps she implies that she wishes that he would look to other forms of faith. So we also have Jennifer, our good friend Jennifer, who just wants to be a star.
She was the original Maxine.
I'm a fucking star! The whole world is gonna know my name!
I'm a star.
I'm a star.
That's Pearl, technically. I cannot tell
That's
you.
Pearl, yeah.
No, I'm a star! Please, I'm a star!
I cannot tell you how many times Pearl and Mia Goth and Tony Collette come up on my podcast. So at least once an episode, one of these three, Tony Collette or Pearl
Made it
or Mia
happen.
Goth. Yeah. And we're gonna throw Maxine in that mix as well, for sure.
I will not accept a life I do not deserve!
But she's gotten her cigarette privileges back, and she's sitting and watching TV, and she's flipping through channels, and then she gets to a talk show, and Zsa Zsa Gabor is getting interviewed.
The best cameo. It has got to be the best cameo.
It's a great cameo. She's answering frivolous questions about, do you think that young actresses should study acting? Oh yes, of course. I can't do it. I don't know why I even
They should
just
fuck.
try.
Study acting fuck.
Sit, darling. Sit, darling.
Yeah.
The talk show host,
Dick
you
Cavett.
hear his voice transform into Freddy Krueger, and he says, "I don't give a fuck what you think." Zsa Zsa Gabor screams and puts her arms up, and it cuts away right before he gets her. I would have loved to have seen Zsa Zsa and Robert Englund on the same set filming this sequence.
I would have loved to have been like in the audience on opening night for the reaction to like Freddie killing
Yeah.
Zsa Zsa Gabor.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wonder what that was like. I wonder if people were like, yeah, because I don't care.
Who do you think if this movie came out today, who would be the celebrity cameo in this moment?
Would it
Kylie
be
Jenner,
Kim Kardashian?
a Kardashian.
Oh,
Yeah.
probably. It would probably be like
I
Kris
think it'd be Jennifer
Kardashian.
Coolidge. I think it'd be hilarious.
Oh my God, what if it was
Coolidge.
Jennifer Coolidge?
Oh yeah, that would be
People should
great.
study acting. Oh yeah.
That was so good. Yeah, it's Jennifer Coolidge for
Of
Nightmare on Elm
course,
Street.
dumbass.
So anyway, all right. So the screen goes to scrambly. I think, I don't know if I'm imagining it. Some of the scrambly lines in this screen look red and green to me. Am I just projecting this?
No, they are. And then even if you hear the background in it, it's Kristen from the opening. That's Kristen
Screaming.
and you hear the little girls, talking from the boiler room. And
Mhm.
it's very intentional, very hidden Freddy is what they like to call it, with
Yeah.
the red and green. In the first one, it was a cookie jar. And the second one, it was some blankets. And then in this one, I think it's the squiggles in the TV.
Yeah, it's so good. She walks up to the, she's not allowed a remote control. I mean, well, it's like a twisty turny dial, right? On this old
I don't know
TV.
if there was a remote in there.
Maybe not mounted to the wall. I'm trying to think. When I was in rehab, and I spent time in a psychiatric hospital as well when I was younger, we didn't have a remote. We had no access to what was on TV at all. They did not let us pick what we were watching. All right, so she starts flipping with the channels, and then the TV sprouts these arms made out of wires and mechanics out of each side and grabs her and lifts her up. And we get this incredible effect of Freddy's head emerging from the top of the television. And I don't know how to
I
describe
love
it.
how the antennas are moving.
They're moving
the
on
entire
top
time.
Yeah.
Looks like from the Jetsons or the Flintstones. I can't remember, where the little green alien comes down.
He was on both. Yeah.
Oh, was he? Okay, that's what it reminds me of. It reminds me of that. Like the
Totally.
Yeah.
And so he, of course, this might be his best one-liner of all time, right? His most iconic, at least. He says,
This is it, Jennifer. Your big break in TV. Welcome to prime time, bitch.
But there's some debate about this. So there's some debate about whether or not Robert says welcome to prime time. So when I was a kid, if it came on TV, they always muted the part that says welcome. And even if you watched it with the captions, it would like explicit out the welcome part. Growing up, I always thought he said, fuck the prime time, bitch. And so today we were watching it in preparation for tonight's episode. And I told my husband, I want you to hear it and hear what he says and look at what he says, look at his mouth, look at everything. And I want you to tell me what he says. And he's like, it's welcome to prime time. And I'm like, no, I want you to really look at it. And so he did. And he goes, oh my God, he does say fuck the prime time. I'm like, yes, if you watch it and know in your head he's saying fuck the prime time, that's what it is. So for me, I always thought it was that until like internet culture where people were like, welcome to prime time, welcome to prime time. And I was like, where in this movie does he say welcome to prime time? In this
wow.
franchise, where does he say this? So I grew up thinking it was fuck the prime time. And the more I talk to other people about it and they rewatch the scene, that's all they hear now as well, too, is him saying fuck the prime time. And I think that also makes more sense. Like, fuck prime time, you're about to go in and die. Like,
Yeah.
so I don't know. To me, that's what it all.
Oh my God. But welcome to prime time has become so iconic.
No.
What
Well-
if they switched that? So many people who had Robert sign that will be so upset. They'd be like, it's not that.
Yeah. The line as written, the first was that initial, are you ready to make your big break in TV? And then so they did 2 takes with that, and then on the third one they set up a different angle, and Robert allegedly ad-libbed either fuck the prime time or welcome to prime time, whichever theory you're going with. And the director couldn't decide which one to use, so he ended up using both of them.
It's perfect. It flows so well.
Yeah, and he shoves her head into the television. There's an electric outlet, it's like electric circuits, and she's dead. She's a goner. These kids are dropping like flies.
Her death is another one that's like sad. Like I
Yeah.
used to love her death, but like when I like watch her, Penelope Sudrow is such a great actress. Like her fear, because her character is only supposed to be like 14, and so when you look at her, you realize, oh my God, this is a 14-year-old girl that he's about to kill through this TV.
Yeah.
And like her fear on her face, like she owns that scene. That Robert's great in that, but her scream, her shaking, the shock on her face, it's just so great.
Yeah. So they do a group hypnosis experiment, and Nancy essentially tells the kids, well, she tells Neil first. He goes to Nancy and says, nothing makes sense anymore. And she says, all right, then maybe you're ready to understand, and tells her story to him. Next day in group, Nancy says, guys, I know who's killing you. And they don't believe her. And she says he wears a dirty brown hat and a red and green Christmas sweater. And they know now that she knows who he is. And she says, Kristen has this ability. She has this gift where she can pull people into her dreams. And Kristen says, I haven't been able to do that since I was a kid. And Nancy says, no, you just did it to me the other day.
The other night.
Yeah, you have. She said, a gift like that doesn't go away. You just forget how to use it. And so they do this really cool experiment with kind of a metronome hypnosis tool with a light that look it up. I don't know how to describe this. It's and as a group they fall asleep. Well, they don't know that they're asleep. One of them says, "Does this thing work?" And then a ball floats up into the air, and they realize they're in the dream world.
We're here.
We're here
in the dream. Very psychedelic.
Will stands up and he says, in my dream, I can walk. And Kincaid bends a chair because he's super strong in his dream.
Look at Taryn.
Look at Taryn.
Check out Taryn. He says, check out Taryn. And that's when it happens, you guys. That's when the moment happens.
Tell us this moment, because I love her delivery of her line.
In my dreams, I'm beautiful. I am bad.
She carries switchblades. She's covered in like awesome, cool studded leather, and she's got a killer kick-ass mohawk. And
super dope mohawk.
She's glittery, and he just looks like a total badass.
He's like a goth superhero.
Yeah, exactly. And and what's his face is a wizard in his dreams.
The original Harry Potter. Will is the original Harry Potter.
Will, so he was playing. He was
speckled. What is it? Wizard.
Rounded, bespectacled. He he has this board game called Wizard's Wonder. What is it?
So it's I think it is called like Wizards and Wonders. It was a play on D&D, and
right.
You could use D&D for like copyright purposes.
Yeah, so he says, in my dreams I'm a wizard, and he catches that ball that was floating and then turns it into a beautiful butterfly. Aww. And so they realize, okay, we're in the dream world together. We can do this, right? And is this? Oh wait, is Joey already in a coma?
Joey then goes to the nurse, and he's getting into water, and the nurse comes up and says, "Joey, come with me. I want to talk to you." And to me, and one of the most unnecessary scenes of the movie. And so she's like, "Do you like my body, Joey?" Like,
she just takes her top off. Do you like my body, Joey? It's so just unnecessary, but so 1987.
But it's like, I mean, it's great. It's like, that's what makes the film great, is because it's like, it's not perfect. It's not a perfect film.
No.
But then she like does the like snake tongues, and she's sneaking out with him. And wraps him to the bed. And then
I like when you see her, she's doing that, and then it looks like there's prosthetic, but maybe she can just scrunch her face like that, because when he chokes on the big tongue, her like nose scrunches and her whole face it almost looks like the vampires in Buffy when they're in vampire form. Yeah, it's like super strange. She really gets all in there.
And then she spits out at his arms and his legs that are tied to, ties him to this bed. She spits out tongues basically. that wrap around his limbs and tie him to this bed. And then she transforms. She's Freddy Krueger, and he says, "What's wrong, Joey? Tongue tied."
Such a great line.
And the mattress drops down below him, and he's hanging. He's like hanging almost like in Temple of Doom, the guy who gets sacrificed over a fire pit, and he's trapped and sucks real bad. So he is now
sucks super bad, you guys. Sorry, Joey.
He's now in a coma, and he's trapped in the dream world, and Freddy has him.
Freddy got him. He's heavy in the halls. There's Joey. Freddy has him.
It's real sad. It's real upsetting. So Nancy and Neil are fired because one of the children under their care is now in a coma. So they're being prescribed Hypnocil, which stops you from dreaming. Nancy takes it, and it's a experimental drug, and Dr. Sims never wanted this, but now she definitely doesn't. And also, you're both fired.
Right.
So now their access to these kids is, they don't have it. They're driving around, and Nancy says, "You know what? There's only one person." Oh, wait, no.
You're skipping over the best part.
Are we talking Nun?
We're talking the Nun. That's my favorite part of the.
Tell us all about it.
So after Nancy and Neil are unceremoniously fired by Dr. Sims and Dr. Carver, who's a major jerk, poopy head to me, Neil is cleaning out his office, and when Neil is cleaning out his office, he unlocks his trunk and he finds a box, and there's a photo of him and Philip and Jennifer in there, and he has like an emotional moment realizing like he's losing his kids, and so he glances up and notices that there's a flickering light in an old tower in Weston Hills. He breaks open the door, flies up the stairs, and realizes that it's the nun, Sister Mary Helen, and she lights the flame on the candle, and in one of the most haunting scenes in the film, turns around and tells Freddy's origin story. And he says, "What is this whole wing closed by some scandal in the 40s?" And she turns around and says, "A lone girl was locked in here over the holiday week. This was fashioned by the hands of purgatory of men," and tells the story of Amanda Krueger and how she was raped by 100 maniacs. And when they found her, she was barely alive and with a child. And then Neil says, "That child is Freddy." And so they have such a great moment where she tells him the only way to quiet the spirit is to find his body and bury him in hallowed ground. And as she's leaving, she says the best line ever: "If your only faith is science, doctor, it may be you who is living the rest." And it's so powerful because it's like speaking to, if you only believe in science and you're just looking at the facts, you're missing the whole thing. Like, look around a big spectrum of things and expand your mind. And it sets it up for him telling Nancy and educating her, and they're now in the car. And she says, "Well, I don't know, but your mysterious nun sure seems to know more about him than I do." And Neil says, "Well, where is the body?" And she says, "Well, only one man knows, and it's time for him to."
And it turns out to be, first off, I'm going to give you a round of applause for that, because that was an incredible delivery of a very iconic moment.
It's my favorite scene in the entire movie. Like, it always has been since I was a kid. Something about her portrayal of Amanda Krueger and just saying to him, if your only faith is science, it may be you who's late. Like that, that always stuck with me as a kid. To like, even I'm not spiritual, I don't believe in all that stuff, but for me, like, it just, I'm more of a connected to the earth and the universe type thing. And I feel like that as a kid was always so like, expand your mind, like it question everything. And so that it's such a powerful moment, because here he is in his world, probably the smartest person that he thinks he is, the smartest person. He's a doctor. He's this, he's so self-righteous trying to save these kids. And here's this nun telling him, "You're completely wrong." And she's like backing up what Nancy says, like, open your mind and expand your world a little bit.
I do think it's a little ironic that someone from the Catholic Church is encouraging someone to expand their mind.
Yes, very much so.
But that's just me.
So what do you guys think about the idea that, you know, this nun, this holy person was, you know, trapped in with all of these insane men, and of course she was raped and just the worst things happened to her, and the only outcome of this horrific incident, of course, was to give birth to Freddy Krueger. I mean, does it seem just like a little bit over the top, or does it not really matter? And am I just thinking too much into it because it's like a horror movie? And of course, they're going to come up with some elaborate story. Like, it just, to me, feels like a lot.
I think that in terms of an origin, it's it's kind of a go big or go home like approach. I think that now it kind of trivial I don't want to say trivializes rape, but it uses it as a device. And I would hope that nowadays the story would not be told that way, you know? In the terms of like where does this evil being come from, I do think it's an effective tool, but it is a tool. And Amanda is never, I mean, yeah, you do see the scene in a later movie, kind of, you know, and but you never get a story, you never get her story except for this terrible thing that happened to her. So Deandra, I think you make a great point about bringing it up because it is worth discussing. You know, I don't think that consumption equals endorsement, and you know, I'm not kind of like making light of the situation that's showcased in this story at all. You know, it's a pretty fucked up origin story. You know, yeah, that's where I'm coming from with it. That's what I think.
I have such like a torn mentality on it because like I agree with like everything that you're saying. I actually agree with a lot of what he's saying. But I also think that it's a very real thing. I think that rape is a very real thing. And I think that having that moment in his origin story just continuously shows the trauma that he has gone through. And for me, I'm not a big fan of that because then it makes you feel bad for him. Like he's a child of rape. He doesn't know who his father is. And then particularly in films like Part 6 where they show his backstory and they show him being bullied, and then by the end of learning his horror story, you're almost cheering for him to kill these people. Of course you're going to go kill all these people. Look what they did to you. You know, like you're cheering for him. And I don't like that. I don't like that we sympathize with the villain, and I feel like this is the start of where you would sympathize with him, is his origin story. But then I also get torn with if she was raped by all these maniacs who, you know, had, you know, disorders and stuff like that, like schizophrenia or something like that. Like it could be passed into him, but then that also stigmatizes mental health. And so it is a really touchy thing. It is a really touchy origin story. And I don't know, and Dee might know this. I don't know who wrote that in. I don't know if that was Wes Craven or if that was Chuck Russell and Frank Darabont. And I don't, obviously they weren't thinking of the implications in 1987 when they were writing the script. And so that's the beauty of self-reflecting on films and analyzing these films, that we can see and point out what shouldn't have necessarily been in this film. And so I love this scene because she's getting a chance to reclaim her story and she's the one telling it. And so that's how I always justify it, is through looking at it in that lens, is that she's the one who's telling her story. It's not somebody else telling her story. It's not them uncovering it in a book and reading about it. And it's just callous and just glossed over. Like she is the one saying, you do, even though you don't know it's her until the end of the movie, she is the one who's saying, this is what happened to me. And this is what birthed from it. And you need to end it. And we know why at the end of the movie, that she can't be the one to end it. And when I look at then carrying it on in the franchise, when you look at Dream Child, where they actually show the scene where she gets locked in and all of that stuff, I feel like that in itself is powerful imagery to his story, but I feel like that wasn't. I feel like that then expands that. I feel like they should have just left it here and left it in this film, in this moment, and left it with Amanda to really be the one to tell her story. I would love like an exploration of who Amanda was, like an origin story into Amanda Krueger, you know, and how what happened after Freddie was born. I mean, we know a little bit about what happened. He was placed in the foster system and all of that. But I would love to know what happened to Amanda. Was she really tormented psychologically from this? Did the church back her up? All of those things. Like, why is her spirit still lingering here and holding on?
Yeah, no, those are great points. And this film, they had every intention of this being the last film, is what I've read, right?
Right.
Which is why we get the ending that we get. And yet we also get the ending that we get, which implies maybe it's not the end. But I mean, Diandra, how do you feel about the origin of Freddy Krueger?
I I very much agree. I think it's, looking back, it was a product of the times of what I think a lot of people thought would happen to somebody like that. Like, what's the most vile thing that could possibly happen to create the most vile person? And of course, it's, mental health and rape and things like that. And since then, sentiments have certainly changed. Um, but, you know, a nun taking care of a lot of mental patients who happen to be men, accidentally getting lost in the shuffle does, happen. But as far as an origin story, I agree with Paige. I feel like it should have been vague, and I wonder if it would have been more powerful, almost like a, he's not made, he's born kind of thing. Because we do end up feeling a lot of sympathy, which is true for a lot of serial killers when you look back. I mean, a lot of them have had some pretty horrific lives, some of them haven't. They just have had something that's different about them that has made them immune to these how they feel about things or whatever. And mental health is a very, very serious issue, but I do feel like it would have been better to be more vague. But to Paige's point, I also do like that it's Amanda controlling the story, and I don't think that they should have really pushed it later on because it almost made it a little too goofy
Yeah.
when it is a very serious situation.
Yeah, because in Dream Child, don't they show one of the men as Robert England? Am I correct?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they do. It's a different
But
representation in Dream Child. It doesn't feel like cared for or like thoughtful. It just feels like, oh, it's a powerful imagery. We're gonna make Alice go into the dream and she's Amanda Kruger. And
yeah,
like, ooh, she's gonna see them and it's gonna be here's Freddie Robert with his face. Like, oh, so then that's his dad. Because then we all know what Robert looks like. So oh, that's his dad. That's the one who does it. It's not terrifying. And in those moments and in that moment, it needs to be terrifying. And so it does, like he says, it almost comes off comical and making light of the situation. And so I think in Dream Warriors, I think that there is a lot more care put into it. And I don't think that was intentional. People aren't thinking that in the 80s. But I think that comes to a testament of the writing on the film and the way that the film was cast. I think that that is a huge testament to everything. That's why Dream Warriors is like the lightning in the bottle sequel because it just works.
yeah, yeah. It all of the above, and I do agree with you, Paige, as well, that it is an impactful and well done scene in the film as well. The delivery of of this story is very well done, and so now we know we got to find Freddy's bones, and as Nancy says, the only one who knows is her father. Now they are estranged after her mother passed away. She says she died in her sleep, which I thought was a really smart way to deal with the vague ending of the first film, right? Because her mom does sink into the bed, and so I thought that was well done. It's pretty upsetting too that while her mom was an alcoholic and now and that is, in my opinion, brought on by Freddy's impact on their lives, right? Now Freddy's impact has driven her dad to being an alcoholic as well, and he's drunk at a bar.
And he's
And
voted. He's now a security guard and no longer the lieutenant of Springwood. So it's like, what did he do? What did he have to cover up? And what did he do to get away with this? And now he's demoted. It's put her entire life and her people in shambles.
yeah,
She went on to be this grad school superstar.
absolutely, she was able to overcome, all of this, and unfortunately, her dad wasn't. And he does a good drunk scene. Drunk scene is hard for an actor to pull off, and I think that he does a really great job with it. And, they have an exchange, and she says, these kids are going to die without our help. And he has to believe her. He knows firsthand, right? So Neil tells her, go to the hospital, try to get in, right? Try to convince Dr. Sims to help these kids, get them on Hypnocil. We have found out that Kristen has been sedated. So we're out of time because Kristen is now about to fall asleep. And when you're sedated, you can't wake up and get out of it. So she leaves, and Neil like shoves John Saxon up against the wall and is like, you may not care about your daughter, but I do. We have to help. We have to go find this body. And John Saxon gives a great performance, a great moment where he's like, I do care, right? Almost like a back off, buddy. You don't know what we've been through thing, but
Right.
also it's like a snap the fuck out of it. Now is the time to step up. So they go to where Freddy's body was dumped when he was killed by all the parents, and it is a junkyard. And this will unfortunately lead us to the famous dog peeing scene later, but we're not there yet. That's in a whole nother movie. They start digging in this graveyard. Now, Nancy gets to the hospital and she runs into Larry Fishburne and she says, listen, can I just at least please say goodbye? This might be my last chance with him. And he's a sweet guy. So he obliges and he lets her. And she's like, listen, kids, we can't fuck around. We are running out of time. We have to fall asleep now and go save Kristen. She's about to fall asleep and she's not going to be able to get out of it. So she starts the light up metronome thing again. And they succumb to slumber, and they all appear in the padded room, the quote quiet room, with Kristen. And it's this kind of a Wizard of Oz moment. Oh, I knew you'd come. It's very like the Lion, Tin Man, and Scarecrow coming to help Dorothy at the Wicked Witch's castle a little bit, right? They're hugging, and Nancy says, well, Kristen says, I feel him, he's here. And Nancy says, well, how do we find him? And before she even finishes her sentence, Freddy's glove starts slashing through the padded walls behind them and then all around them, and we get these feathers from the padding just flying all over the place. And as the feathers start to land, each of these kids gets pushed into their own separate dreams, and we follow Kristen first.
She's screaming for Nancy's help, but she knows
Mhm.
that's happened.
Yeah, and boy does it happen. She finds herself in her own bedroom, and we see the scene with her mother from the beginning again, but her mother's a little nicer this time until she's not. And that we hear that
She
voice.
should have quit while she was ahead.
Yeah. Freddy cuts her head off and he wags it in Kristen's face. And I love this actress's delivery. It's just her severed head saying, you brat, you spoiled brat, you never think of anything but yourself. You ruined my love life, and just going off on her. And then Freddy just shoves her face into Kristen's face. And Kristen jumps up off the bed and jumps out the window, but instead of it leading outside, it leads to the inside of what I now know is that paper mache model of Nancy's house. And she goes down the stairs, trapped in this house, and she starts screaming for Nancy. Now we move on to Taryn, who can hear Kristen screaming for Nancy, but Taryn finds herself in a dark alley.
Jake's bar, I think is what it's called.
Yeah,
Jake's bar on the wall.
Why Jake's bar? Because I looked up, it's not the bar it's not Don's place from that part 2. What is there a significance to Jake?
I don't know. I think that might have just been a set design thing, but I love that it has the Taryn and Freddy on the wall too.
Yeah, graffiti, Taryn and Freddy. Yeah.
That's why it's on our poster. That's why it's on our poster. That was a big thing for us. And we wanted to put the T plus the F on our poster because we thought that's such a signal, like such a okay, some shit's about to go down.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There is a homeless man kind of crouched around, and he stands up and walks past her, and you think it's going to be Freddy, but it's not. It probably
Bob
is.
Shay. Bob Shay. That's his one cameo. Everyone's like, he's not in Dream Warriors. No, he is. That he's the homeless guy. Bob Shay is in every film. And
I didn't know that. That's so cool.
Yeah, he's the homeless guy.
That's amazing. So she bumps into Freddy, and they have a knife fight. She pulls out her switchblade. Knife fight. He gets her in the thigh. She gets him in the rib cage under the arm. It's a very tender spot. Ugh, it gets me every time. And he says, "Hey, why are we fighting? You remember me?" And he lifts his fingers up, and his fingers have turned into syringes with these blue drugs in them. And his voice work is incredible because at first he's talking like this kind of up here, and then suddenly it's let's get high, and it's so
high.
like
Yeah.
oh, chills up my spine. And she looks down at her vein at her in her arms, and the veins are like almost like Audrey 2 at the beginning of Little Shop when it's
Yeah.
little baby Audrey 2 like drinking up the blood, and they're like, oh, it's so upsetting, and it looks so real. It looks so like good. And he jams these finger syringes into her arms and shoots her up, and we see the drugs like inject into her, and the vein up the side of her face starts popping. It's a great effect, and it's just we've spoken about it already, but man, is it hard to watch.
But it's such a good scene. It's so hard to watch, but it's such a good scene. And that again also speaks to Jennifer Rubin and her vulnerability and the acting in that scene. It's amazing.
Yeah, I loved her appearance in your documentary also. It was great to see her.
She was so much fun. Like even just Dee filmed that, so Dee knows all about that experience. But even just she just bumping into her afterwards, like she was so excited for this. She sent us some other stuff too that we just couldn't find a place for it in the doc. So we have like a bunch of stuff with her. But Jennifer Rubin she's just so much fun. Like she just is like a all of energy and just good spirited, good natured. She's like what I call good people, you know.
Yeah. Oh, good. I love hearing that. I love when these iconic horror actors really do enjoy the convention experience, and that they really do appreciate the fans, because I'm certain that there are some of them who probably don't, and that's their journey, and you know what I mean.
And that's one of the things I love that Mark Patton says in Scream Queen, when he's like, you might think you're being a whore, but you better be a good whore, because basically these people like are paying you money to meet these people. Like they're not paying to meet the real you that has all these problems and whatnot. They're paying to meet, Mark Patton, the actor, and that kind of stuff. And so yeah, it is good to hear when people are good people, because it's very true. And like I will never forget the first time I heard Mark say that. I was like, oh yes, tell him Mark, because I know he and I have had some conversations about some people and just how they really are. So yeah, it's always a relief to hear things about that. But yes,
that's the difference too with the nightmare thing, and with the whole nightmare universe. It all kind of ties in to the different fandoms and stuff, because we all go to these conventions obviously and meet all these celebrities and stuff like that and have experiences, and we've all had great experiences, we've all had bad experiences. But I have to say, with the nightmare stars, I feel like there's not one bad apple in the nightmare stars. I feel like they all recognize this, but like for the most part, they all recognize it. But I think that it really does make them. That's why they stand out, because they know the importance of the fandom, and they know the importance of what these fans bring. I'm not going to say which one, but we were at a convention and we were hanging out all having dinner, and one of the stars said to me like, man, like I just really appreciate this. This pays my rent. He's like, I'm very appreciative of the fans because this pays my rent. He's like, they're working hard and they're hard-earned money. They're coming to meet me. He's like, and why wouldn't I be turning it on? And that I think is very indicative of all the nightmare stars for the most part. They're all that way. They're just incredibly appreciative. And so when we were doing the documentary, we knew that we had to have some of them in it. Obviously, we have to have some of the nightmare stars in it. We can't just have a nightmare documentary without them. For the most part, all of them were incredibly open and welcome, and like, yeah, of course, like let's talk about this. Let's talk about the fandom. And so I think it's a true testament. Also,
I'm so glad to hear that. I'm going to New Jersey HorrorCon at the end of this month, and I'm going to meet Christina Leese and Alex Vincent from Child's Play 2, and it's my favorite horror movie poster is Chucky cutting off the Jack in the Box's head with hedge clippers. And so I don't like meeting celebrities, and I don't like meeting the people that I really admire. I'm a waiter in New York City, so when I meet celebrities, it's usually me bringing them food, and that's not, it's just not always the best interaction. Right. I'm not meeting them, I'm serving them. That's our exchange. So I'm excited and maybe a little bit nervous to meet them because I love that movie so much, but
you're going to have a blast. They're both incredibly kind.
That's what I've heard. I've heard nothing but really nice things about them. So, all right. So Taryn has expired. Now Will is walking down a tunnel and Freddy shows up, and reveals a oversized wheelchair that looks like a torture device with like spikes and screws, and it's like if an Iron Maiden were repurposed into a wheelchair, and tells him have a seat or something mean like that. And Will turns into a wizard in, frankly, I'm gonna have to say this is not the best fitting costume. Something about the shoulders just
It is
doesn't.
very awkward. It is very awkward.
Yeah, but we get our hair. He's got this giant wizard collar. Like, listen, don't get me wrong. It's a cool, like, it would probably fit me better than it fits him, though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
But
it looks
anyway.
like a little boy tried on his dad's Halloween costume.
Yep. And but he's able to shoot a green electricity out of his fingers, and it starts hurting Freddy, and he runs up real close to him, but then Freddy stabs him with his finger knives, and it's real fucked up. It's real sad.
It is, especially because he tells him, he goes, "Sorry, kid, I don't believe in fairy tales." And then he
Ugh.
rips his heart out. Like he's really ripping his heart out. Like, I don't believe in you. I don't believe in your fairy tales shit. You're dying. That's it. It's so sad.
It's real sad. Real sad. So we have Kristen and Nancy meet up in what is kind of like a nursery room, which now it's so funny. I was watching this and I was thinking, what the fuck is this doing in Nancy's house? But now that I know that this is the model that Kristen has built, it makes so much more sense the way that it looks. And they hear a noise, and Kincaid busts through the wall like the Kool-Aid Man.
Oh yeah!
And he's hearing. He's so cool, and he says, they say, I thought we heard voices, and I'm so glad, I'm so excited I could kiss you. Well, what's stopping you? And she gives him a little kiss on the cheek, and
It's so cute.
The camaraderie between these characters is just fucking great, right? But we're here to save Joey. We gotta save Joey. So they find him, and he's in this massive, really well lit boiler room. And I don't mean well lit like it's bright in there, well lit like the lighting looks cool. Almost
it looks
like
so cool.
80s neon arcade lighting a little bit. I could see this set showing up on Stranger Things, right? So he's still dangling over the fire pit with these tongue straps, and a battle ensues. And Freddy like smacks Kristen back, and she's on her back, and Nancy steps on this giant pipe and it starts to fall, but Kincaid uses his strength to hold it up for her so that she can now cross over a giant like canyon or a giant hole in the ground and get over there to help. And she gets over there, and at this same
Joey falls in, right before he falls in, she comes to the rescue and grabs his arm, like right there, right before he falls in.
And then she's about to be pulled in too, but then Kincaid is able to grab her. He grabs her by like kind of the belt loop at the back of her jeans and pulls them both up because he's so strong. While all of this is happening, John Saxon, so Daddy Thompson, and Neil are fighting for Freddy's bones in the junkyard. There's so much excitement. I can't handle it. And Freddy's bones reassemble, and this is stop motion animation at its finest. I actually think it looks really cool. Reminds me of that famous scene in Jason and the Argonauts where they're fighting the army of skeletons. And they're fighting, and there's a battle, and Nancy's dad gets it. He gets it bad. He gets shoved up and impaled from behind on like a piece of car. I don't know.
Doesn't it look? It is, but like, doesn't it look so realistic when it goes through him?
Yeah.
Like it's the back of a convertible, like a 1950s convertible. It almost looks like Len's car from the first film. And when he gets thrown into it, that like triangle spike piece on the or whatever it's called goes right through it. That's hard for me to watch because I'm like, oh, it looks too real. Like it's good.
It's a great effect. It's a really good effect. So John Saxon's dead, and Neil gets knocked out and shoved down into the grave, and Freddy's bones start.
And Freddy goes, oh, and then he disappears.
Yeah, he does. So that's happening while this is happening over in the boiler room. Now I want the sound bit of him going, no, you know what? I take that back. I want the sound bit of you going,
So, like, the movie until that point has been pretty serious.
Yeah.
And then when Freddy goes, I was like, oh, God.
I love that like, you still hear it as like the mirror opens when Nancy and Kristen and Joey and Kincaid are like coming through the thing, and you still hear them like, ah.
Yeah. Wait, how does Freddy's bones disassemble? How does that happen?
So after they disassemble, they fall back to the ground, and then you are
Yeah.
back on the Dream Warriors, and
Yeah, they're just kind of in a pile because he leaves that body.
Yeah, and goes
Because
back.
when
Okay.
he's holding Kincaid, he feels that they're like trying to, get rid of him. And
Yeah,
so then
yeah.
he just fizzles away, and then once he's done, causing deaths and stuff, he just mwahahas and then falls back to the ground.
And then he comes into the mirror room, and they come into the mirror room, and they get locked in a
It's
very
so cool.
He says, "Sorry,
It's such a
to keep
great scene.
waiting. Maybe if there were more of me around, there'd be more." And so then that's when they get all stopped.
And we get Freddy in every mirror that's hanging on. It's a long, red, rusty looking hallway with these mirrors with gold frames hanging. And we get a Freddy in each mirror, and he starts reaching out for them, and he's grabbing them, and he's pulling them into the mirrors. And it looks so cool. I just, the effect, how it was done in 1987, it looks great. And they're getting sucked into these
Amazing.
mirrors. And one by one, you think, oh no, this is it. This is the end. It's like at the end of Toy Story 3 when they all start saying goodbye to each other, when they're sinking down into the lava pit. And just, you see it in their faces.
That had no business being that sad. That movie,
was so sad.
that was horrible. Like,
Yeah.
I could not imagine being a kid watching that. I was traumatized.
I was crying real hard. No, I know. And to the point that, like, I'm a big Disney nerd.
Me too.
I will not rewatch part 3. I won't do it.
Oh,
You
yeah.
can't make me.
No way.
I've only seen it one time. I can't. It's too much. It's that scene where they're just about to melt. I don't know.
It's Woody's
And
face.
even just the goodbyes, all of it, it's too
Yep.
sad.
They
Can't
say
do it.
goodbye without words, and Woody's face is just like, okay, this is it. Like, he accepts mortality in front of an audience of children. But that's not. Well, I'll do another episode about the nightmare that is Toy Story 3. In the meantime, so Freddy's back in the dream world, Neil wakes up and he shoves the bones back down into the dirt. How do the mirrors smash?
So Joey gets backed into a corner. He's grabbed, and he finds his dream power. He finds the inner strength finally, and screams. And his voice is so loud it shatters the mirrors.
Does he scream? He screams no, right?
Yeah.
And then they all fall out of the mirrors in such an epic scene where like Nancy shoots out across from the top, Kristen rolls through the bottom, Kincaid like flings out of that small little mirror, and they just land on the ground in nothing but shattered glass. It's so cool.
It's really great. And they all land facing away from the camera so that you can't see the stunt doubles that actually did it.
Right.
Oh man.
You found your dream power, man.
Yeah, it's and they're just so supportive of each other,
And then that's it. The movie's over. Bye. Nothing else happens in the movie that's worth talking about. It's all fake. It never really happened.
Except this incredibly sad thing that's about to happen.
I don't know what you're talking about.
What?
Okay. Well,
he doesn't know what to do, Paige. He's like, I don't know how to handle this.
You go ahead and mute it. You mute it, and I'll go ahead and finish this. How's that?
Put my fingers in my ears.
Nancy is face to face with her father. He flies in on a golden beam, and he says, "Hey, princess, I'm passing on to the other side, and I'm really proud of you, and I love you so much." And she says, He says, "I'll always love you." She says, "I'll always love you too, Daddy." And then she hugs him. And then we hear her die because Freddy's glove has been like plunged into her torso, and it was Freddy playing a mean old joke on her. And
epic scream from Heather. Like,
she would have never fallen for that for reals. Like, after the first movie, we all know, like, there was the bed and Freddy was nowhere to be found, and she was like, "Oh, I know you're still here. I know you're still." And then suddenly the mirrors shatter and she's like, "It's over." And then she's like, "Oh, Dad, I mean,
no,
now
that's a great
this
point. It's the same like long scheme, but with a different parent.
Yeah. And I mean, the thing is, the original script was written by Wes Craven and Bruce Wagner. and then it was rewritten. And in the original script, Nancy like plays it out, but she knows it's Freddy, so she stabs him with his glove, and then he stabs her, and they go down in a death grip. But this one, Chuck Russell changed it to be, that Nancy doesn't assume that it's her dad,
That's
which I
so
think
much
is such an
better.
injustice to the character. Yeah. Oh, and there's more to the end of that story. There's more to the end of that story, which I'm sad that they didn't talk about it. But, we try to talk about it as much as possible so that we spread the word and people know.
So the question is Nancy really dead? And so
Yeah.
for us, like, we look at this ending as a lot of people look at this ending and who don't know that it carries on into like the comic book series, right? So there's a comic book series that was released after this film, and it carries on. It tells you really what happens to Nancy after Dream Warriors. And so people don't necessarily know that. So they see this and they're like, wow, she didn't go down with like a warrior's death. She was tricked. She was this. And it does feel very not Nancy. It feels like the whole like, you know, tripping and falling and type of thing. Like Nancy's, that's not who Nancy is. Nancy is not that. She's powerful, she's strong, she's smart. And so the original ending would have been so much better. But then you get the question of when, did Nancy really die? As she falls into the arms of Kristen, Kristen says, I'm going to dream you into a beautiful dream for and ever and ever. You're not going to die. I'm not going to let you die. I'm going to dream you into a beautiful dream.
Yeah.
So the canon storyline to that is they commissioned Andy Mangels to do the comic book series for Innovation Comics after this, is that Nancy goes into the beautiful dream. And so Nancy now is the guardian, the gatekeeper. And so she's gatekeeping the beautiful dream against Freddy Krueger. And that is canon storyline. That is
Yeah, New Line commissioned those to be a lead-in to Freddy's Dead. So they are approved by New Line. So it is canon, and it's based also on the original script where at the end Kristen and Neil are sitting down and they start talking about, do you still see her? And he's like, yeah, I'm going to see her later on, and tell her I said hi. And it is, Nancy is living on in the beautiful dream.
What a
That's
better
what Wes wrote.
fucking ending.
That's why at the end the light comes on in the
Right.
house. That's what the representation for it. So at the end of the movie, Nancy dies. They have her funeral. It's incredibly sad and heartbreaking. And the guy who's doing the funeral for the service is the same guy who did Rod Lane's funeral in part 1. And so that's the connection as well too. And so he's speaking on Nancy and he's saying those who live by the sword die by the sword. She threw herself on the sword for these kids. And then in the end, you see Neil laying in bed with the house. Originally, it was supposed to be that. It was supposed to be him and Kristen meeting up. And it's such a better ending. So what they did is they took all of that and put it in the comic books and said, this is what we're going to do. We're going to like retcon the ending of Dream Warriors.
Are these comics readily available or are they like $1 million on eBay?
No, you can get them at conventions. You can get them online pretty cheap.
Cool.
They are available on Nightmare on Elm Street Films.com. They have all of the comics, and it's such a great comic book series because not only does it talk about what happens to Nancy, it also talks about what happened to her between 1 and 3, that she, put her head down, she studied hard, she had these roommates, and that also, going into the asylum, and basically living out her own version of Dream Warriors. And then the comics, it's a crossover, and essentially Alice and Nancy pretty much meet. But it's Neil who's helping Alice, and then Alice and a bunch of her friends end up in the dream, and then the Dream Warriors return, and they're going to battle Freddy, and then basically Nancy saves Alice and the day. So it's like such a great movie. It's such a great story. Yeah.
That was going to be the basis of Freddy's Dead, was that the Dream Warriors originally come back and they're, Alice and Jacob. And then that's why John Doe is actually Jacob in part 6, unofficially, because when they changed the script, they changed him to a John Doe. But it's so good. Even like there's so much stuff that people don't realize with Dream Warriors that is that connection to what really happened to Nancy. So when she tells Neil, I used to be like them, Neil. Like, she's not just saying that she was a kid stalked by Freddy. She's saying I was institutionalized like them for this. People didn't believe me. I had to fight this. And so for us, we're such big fans of that storyline. We made a fan film. Like we're like, let's put this into motion and let's show what this could have been.
That's
To
amazing.
what the fandom really is, to really what Nancy's story is.
Well, and how would they turn that down and make Freddy what is Freddy's Dead instead? Like,
That's because that's because they were working with oh, I can't think of it. They were working on Crybaby. And so like they were working on the John Waters films, and they were like knowing that like that was kind of like funny. And they decided to go with a funnier script. They decided to go with what we have. And I love Freddy's Dead. I think it's a great popcorn film. It's not my favorite by any means at all, but I would have wished that they would have went with that storyline. And I think Jennifer Rubin, I don't know if they knew about it at the time. I can't remember if they knew about it at the time that like that's what they were, but it was Jennifer Rubin's character. It was Will was in it, and then Kincaid was in it. And those were the dreams that were going to come back and help Alice and Jake.
I mean, just imagining from an audience perspective, Nancy going along with this and then killing, like, quote, her father. Like, what a moment in a movie theater is that, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, it just to finish out what happens in that scene, Neil starts pouring gasoline on Freddy's bones and says ashes to ashes. And as he's doing that, the gasoline on the bones like kind of lights up all over Freddy's body in the dream world. And at the last minute, Nancy jumps up from behind, grabs him by the hand, and shoves his glove into him and goes down, killing him. I like the idea of her not being duped at all. And then, you know, I don't know. I mean, that moment where Kristen says I'll put you away in a safe dreamland. And I mean, it's such a great, sad thing. And I'm really glad to know that there's more to it. I can't wait to look into it.
Yeah. It's I think you'll really like the story. And I like that not only that comic book, that run of comic books did it, but also Freddy versus Jason versus Ash, Nightmare Warriors also brings back, of course, Nancy and the Beautiful Dream,
Cool.
which is great.
That's great. Well, at Nancy's funeral, Neil happens to glance over and see Sister Mary Helen behind a grave again. She just kind of hangs out in graveyards, I guess. Well, we're about to find out why, because he goes over to see her and she's gone. But he looks at the grave that she was standing at, and it is the grave of Amanda Kruger, her name in Christ, Sister Mary Helen. So she had changed her name from Amanda Kruger to the nun name, her like nun alias, Sister Mary Helen. And he realizes A, that was Kruger's mom, B, she was a fucking ghost.
Right.
Yeah.
And
What a whammy.
as you mentioned, we get the last shot of Neil in bed. The popsicle stick and paper mache house is next to him, and the light turns on. And then
now the paper mache house is completed. Kristen finished it.
Cool.
Yeah, so that's what we think is like holding the beautiful dream, is that Nancy is in there. Kristen finished it. She dreamed her in.
Because I know that like the nightmare films have a tendency to just like hint at Freddy at the end, but that one just feels different. It feels more positive. Like the music is lighter. The Malaysian dream doll that Nancy had is right there in front of the house, and Neil is sleeping peacefully. It feels like who could it be? And it's probably Nancy. That's what I've always thought.
Completely changed the way that I will look at this film for the rest of my life, and my listeners. Hey, listeners, you owe a big thank you to Paige and Diandra for sharing that with us. We go into the credits with the iconic "We Are Dream Warriors," and so fucking good. And that is A Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors. All right, you have been so generous with your time. I'm so sorry this, has taken longer than I told you that it would. I have one more question to ask. Well, I guess two. Yeah. First is, on the Rick Retreat Horrorcast, we have a rating system, and I already know our answers, but I have to ask this anyway. A movie is either a trick, which means it's okay, or it's a treat, which means you loved it, or it's a smell my feet, which means it sucks. Paige, rate this movie.
It's definitely a treat. It's a tasty, delectable, amazing treat.
It's a full-ass candy bar for me.
Yeah, treat all the way. I never get tired of it. And now I've already watched it twice this week. I'm excited to watch it again with this new ending perspective. You've really opened this up to me, and I'm so excited for it. And I again cannot thank you enough for taking the time to appear on this show. I'm so excited for you and your documentary. Will you tell my listeners, A, where they can find your documentary? Because every single one of you needs to watch this film, and B, where my listeners can stalk you.
So for the documentary, we update our website and our Facebook pretty regularly. So our website is www.fredheadsdoc.com. And then you can find us on our social medias at FREDHEADSdoc, and you can purchase it on Amazon, Walmart, FYE, deep discounts as well. There's a bunch of sites that have it, but we direct everything from our website, and we keep selling out. So thank you to everybody who keeps selling us out. We're really appreciative of that. It's really cool. And then for me, you can find me. I am not really big on a lot of social media platforms except for TikTok. I talk horror there and talk about the Vampire Slayer and Nightmare on Elm Street. And that is the Final Girl 13. But girl is GURL. So like girl, the Final Girl 13.
And you can find me at Sassy Sledgehammer. Full Sledgehammer on Instagram, Sledgehammer without the A and the E in hammer because they wouldn't let me put the characters there. So Sassy Sledgehammer, also on YouTube at Captain Sassy Media, which is the project that I have with my significant other, the Jason to my Freddy. So we do lots of fun things there. And we have a small like skit show called Freddy versus a guy named Jason, where I have a Dark Ride Studios dope Freddy mask and I play Freddy and he plays some guy named Jason that I room with, and it's a quirky little take on what if Freddy Krueger had a roommate.
That sounds like some role play that I would do, but it might be a very different video than it sounds like what you're doing.
It's the funniest thing you will ever see. If you have to go watch it. It is there's one, I'm not going to spoil it, but there's one that like, if I'm ever in a down mood, I have it saved to my phone because it is just hilarious what they do.
Is it work from home?
Yes, it's work from home.
Well, you're giving me so many assignments, like reading comic books and rewatching this movie and now watching your YouTube channel, and I can't wait for all of it. If you want to follow me, Ricky, I'm at Rick, the letter R, Treat on Instagram, Rick or Treat, without the O because somebody's taken it. And he doesn't post anything. He just has this fucking screen name and he won't take it.
My girl, somebody took the Final Girl 13.
So annoying.
He doesn't post, and I'm like, give it to me. I'll buy it off of you. I don't care.
The podcast, Rick or Treat Horrorcast, is Rick or Treat Pod. The O is in that one. I'm launching a website soon, rickortreat.com, and I will be figuring out TikTok real fast. I've already gotten the screen name, the handle, Rick or Treat Pod. So I don't have Twitter. I left that universe, but I'm going to try to be like the youngsters, and I'm going to start a TikTok. And that's what we have for you. Paige, Diandra, thank you so much. I can't thank you enough.
Thank you so much for having us. Thank you for watching the documentary, and thanks for saying wonderful things about it. It means a lot.
Screaming it from the rooftops. And we'll see y'all later, spookies.
Thanks for coming Rick or Treating. You can follow the show on Instagram at Rick or Treat Pod. It'd be a real scream if you'd take a moment to subscribe, rate, and review the show on whatever platform you're listening on. The show's spooky intro and outro music is a cover of Camille Saint-Saëns' Danse Macabre, with orchestrations composed and performed by Lestat von Monlicht. Links to the artist's music can be found in the episode description. Check him out, he's frighteningly talented. Rick or Treat Horrorcast is independently produced by me, Ricky J. Duarte of Rick or Treat Productions. If you like what you heard, tell a friend. If you didn't, well, they're coming to get you, listener.